All right, hello. Welcome back to Unqualified Analysis. Life is pain, existence is suffering. You know the deal. We are talking about sports. We are talking about the NFL in particular. It is another division preview today. We got some headlines first, but we're going into a division preview. And you know what? I'm your host for that adventure of a lifetime, Caleb Verzak. Follow me on my socials at Caleb Verzak. Link will be down in the description of this here episode so you can find it easily and don't have to go through a little impromptu spelling lesson on the Eastern Bloc of last names. So yeah, with that said, we're back. We're doing more sports. I'm dead inside. What else is new? It's another Monday after a trip out of the state to a different place entirely. I'm tired, you know. Like I said, life is pain, existence is suffering. But outside of that, we're doing good, and let's do a little bit better, shall we? Let's just get straight into the news. I'm here to talk about some sports. Forget about life for a little bit, huh? My discipline should be applauded for waiting throughout that entire little 1 minute intro to actually take a sip out of that sports drink that I was holding in my hands. No free ads, certainly no paid ads either, just because that's just the way life goes. I digress on that front. Let's talk about some headlines though, shall we? From really around the sports world, because since the last time we talked, a conference has disintegrated before our very eyes in the world of college sports. Of course, I am talking about the Pac-12. It started last week with the opening salvo of Colorado deciding to join the Big 12. After that, it was a cascade effect. There was word coming out, rumblings that, hey, the Four Corners schools, Arizona, Arizona State, Utah, one of them is just, they're all just waiting for one of them to make the first move, then they're all gone. Saying, okay, believe it when I see it. Next thing you know, boom, Arizona decides to join the Pac-12. Boom, Arizona State, Utah also joining the Pac-12 after, of course, they did the formality of the board of trustees, whatever, board of directors of the Big 12, saying yada yada yada. Let's do a little vote. They vote unanimously to invite all three of those teams, four if you include Colorado, to the Big 12. And just like that, if you fell asleep some 15 years ago, you just woke up, oh man. Tell me what's happened in the time that I was asleep, right? Well, Colorado's in the Big 12 now. Well, that's not different. They were in the Big 12 when I went to sleep. Well, while you were asleep, they went to the Pac-12, then decided the Pac-12 was a burning ship that they had to jump off of right away, and they went over to the Big 12. And at this point, the person in front of you is like, what is going on right now? And like, that's not even the craziest part. USC's in the Big 10 now. So is UCLA. And at this point, the head has just exploded entirely. They have no idea what's going on. They're like, I thought college football was regional. It's like, no, 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 no. This is the brave new world, bud. The almighty dollar is officially ruling everything. Not like it didn't before, but we are going straight out the window with all that pretense of tradition and whatnot, regionality, cult mentality, if you will, when it comes to these college sports. We are in this, like I said, brave new world. That wasn't all, too, by the way. Obviously, if you lose the Arizona schools, you lose Colorado, you lose Utah especially, the conference is hurting, but it is not entirely dead yet. At least you still got Oregon and Washington, right? Right? Well, about that, the Big Ten decided to deal the finishing blow to the Pac-12 by inviting both Oregon and Washington to the Big Ten. So now you got basically poached the top four brands from the Pac-12, that being USC, UCLA, Washington, and Oregon, all to come over to the Big Ten. Big pickups for the Big Ten as far as quality teams are concerned. That's pretty much the death knell for the Pac-12, though, after this season. After this season, basically the only teams left are, I want to say, Cal, Washington State, Oregon State, and Stanford. That's pretty much it. Everyone else just jumped ship right before our eyes over the course of a week. Now, this has been percolating for quite some time, obviously, before that, but it all came to head and it flamed out very quickly over the course of a week. People just jumping ship left and right, and when all was said and done, the Pac-12 was dead. I mean, maybe I'm sure they're going to try and add another like 8 teams to get back up to 12 or 6 teams to become the Pac-10 again. All of the quote unquote power of that Power 5 conference, it's gone. The top probably half of the conference just left for greener pastures outside of Oregon State and Washington State, which at this point, if you can find a dancing partner, might as well go dance elsewhere at this point, because it is officially stick a fork in them. It's cooked. It's done. The Pac-12 is absolutely dead after the 2023-2024 season, and it happened quicker than we could have possibly imagined when it all went down. All kind of stemmed, if you want to find like a key domino that sent this whole train falling down, look no further than the reports at the beginning of last week about the TV deal, really streaming deal that was being leaked out by the Pac-12 as far as streaming rights were concerned. First off, it was only like $20 million a year. For comparison, the Big Ten, that's per school, by the way, $20 million a year per school. It was through Apple. Again, for comparison, the Big Ten distributes roughly like $40 million a year to their membership schools. So you're taking half of the money of another Power 5 school. I'm sure there were incentives to get up to more. That shouldn't be a way that a streaming rights deal worked. That should tell you just about where this was all coming from. Like, okay, this is not good. Then next thing you hear is the Pac-12 hasn't reached a deal with Apple. Then almost like hours later, Colorado was the first of the dominoes to say, see ya, which honestly, the first of the dominoes to fall fell last season when USC and UCLA decided that they were joining the Big Ten this following year. But for the true final explosion, the pyroclastic flow that just destroyed the Pac-12, if we're going to use the eruption analogy here, go look it up, kids. That's big time volcano knowledge right there. You just go look it up and go learn something today. All right. Basically, that all came to a head with the TV rights deal, and how it basically fell through after that whole debacle of last week. And now, hey, Larry Scott started stabbing. George Klykov finished the deal when it came to killing the Pac-12. I mean, they had every opportunity to seek expansion opportunities, to not rest on their laurels, to try and keep the conference alive at all costs, and not pretend like we were living in 2005, say, where a conference realignment was not a thing that we were thinking about, not a thing on anyone's radar for that matter. Something that, I mean, nothing cataclysmic is going to happen to a power conference like the Pac-12. We're all sticking together. This is a united front. That's not the world of 2023, unfortunately, and it cost George Klykov, it cost the Pac-12 in general, basically its identity as a Power 5 conference. We've been talking about how the Power 5 is basically dead. There is, at the very best, a Power 4 now, and the ACC is another one that we'll talk about in just a second. Put that on the back burner, but let's just tease that by saying they're not exactly out of the woods either. That's been percolating for just about as long as the Pac-12. Again, we'll put that aside, talk about that for just a second, because the Big 12 comes out of this clearly as the third best conference in the nation right now. It's a Power 2, and then the next one is the Big 12. And I'll say right now, the only difference between the Pac-12 and the Big 12 was the Pac-12's want to stick around at all costs. You think about back in the day when the Pac-12 took Colorado from the took Colorado from the Big 12. I'm sorry, brain is absolutely dead after a full day of work today. Don't need to bring my mind back to that stuff. But think back in 2010, whenever the last big wave of conference realignment happened. Texas OU almost left the Big 12 back then. Big 12 was able to keep it together, but they lose Colorado to the Pac-12. Pac-12 looks like it's as strong as it ever has been and ever will be, and the Big 12 looks like it's on life support. You don't know when it's going to blow up. Basically, the Big 12 was like the Pac-12 now, just back whenever the first big spate of realignment happened. They stuck together for that time. If you would have asked any person on the side of the street which conference is going to blow up first, the Big 12 or the Pac-12, of college football watching audiences, I would say probably 8 of the 10 are telling you, oh yeah, the Big 12 is not long for this world. I was one of those 8 back in the day. I mean, it did not look like the Big 12 was long for this world. Fast forward a decade, here we are, the Big 12 has just survived by sheer force of willpower. The Pac-12 rested on their laurels, and that got them absolutely gutted at all levels, from all directions. I mean, the only Power 3 conference that didn't take anyone out of there was the SEC, because they're already taking the 2 top brands of the Big 12 anyways. They're taking Texas and OU next season, going to have a 16-team conference right there, right out of the gate. I mean, again, the only difference between the Pac-12 and the Big 12 is the Big 12 was not resting on their hands. They were going down swinging. If they were going to go up in a ball of flames, they were not going to sit back there and just let the Big 10 and the Big 12 just take their lunch money, essentially. They were going to go out there and go take anything they could and try and stay as relevant as they could. I don't think they were ever thinking they were going to be one of those top 2. I don't think they were expecting to surpass the SEC or the Big 10, because that's just not realistic. What they did do was secure their place as the 3rd best conference, and now we're looking at the ACC, where you're hearing stuff about FSU maybe being the first college program to get NIL funding from a private equity firm, which, by the way, just a quick interjection on that, that's code for Saudi Arabia. There's no other, and it's not just like the jokes, the modern meme of course they bought up the PGA. Now they're bring their sports washing game all the way over here. That's the big joke nowadays. Obviously, like, oh, there's a team coming up for sale. The Saudis are going to bid $10 billion for them. We all know that's going to happen. It's not even just that. It's the fact that no equity fund worth their salt is ever going to be able to justify to shareholders investing in a college football team. And you know why? Because it doesn't pay. It's not a business. It's not there for investors to make money. It's not even there for boosters to make money. It's there for insane fans to put all this money into their program, with the only reward in sight being that their program is going to be really, really sweet. They're not getting any payouts from it. It's not an investment. It is just donation, essentially. You are essentially donating to a nonprofit that's making all sorts of money but giving you none of it. You're not buying shares in a company. You are simply giving money to a program. So how do you make money off of that? You don't make money off of that at all. And if you're going into private equity, you're not just spending money to spend money so that a program gets good. You're spending money. No, you're actually not spending money. You are investing money. You are expecting returns on that money. You are disappointed when you get negative returns, and you are absolutely 95%, if not even more, guaranteed. It's 100% guaranteed that if you put money into a college team, you will not get that money back. This is not a money-making game. This is a game where crazy fans and people that just want all the glory in the world can go in there, or not even glory for themselves, glory for this this team that they're putting money into, and that's their only expected reward. The only equity fund, bringing it back to the Saudis here, that would take that deal is one that is not looking to make money, one that is looking to reshape an image in the global light, which the Saudis have been doing for quite some time, and that would fit the bill, because they would be the automatic heroes of the day if they were able to just foot the bill for just backing out of that ACC TV deal, which is the worst of the Power 5. I mean, even even like the Apple deal with the Pac-12 is probably better than what the ACC is locked into right now. And it's been said that ACC TV contract is about ironclad as ironclad gets. More than half the conference has already looked into trying to dissolve it and trying to get out of it. The only way that I see this happening, as far as quote unquote private equity getting involved in NIL, is if that private equity just says, okay, what's the price that I have to do to buy out this contract and be the savior of the day for insert school here, FSU in this particular circumstance. It's not going to make them money, but it's going to win them over some reputation with a few Americans down in the South. It'll get them into a new sports league where they can earn, curry favor with the fans a little bit more, kind of soften their image in America even more, so we keep spending money on that sweet, sweet oil, which we're going to do anyways. You don't have to try this hard, Saudi Arabia. We were going to keep buying your oil. It is what it is, all right? But watch out for that, though, man. I mean, I would not be shocked at all. It's college football though, so this is one of those things where in many other circumstances I would say, nah, this would never happen. No, they're not going to accept that dirty blood money, except for it happened, in every single sports league imaginable, pretty much. I mean, at least soccer and golf just happened to a certain extent. I would not be shocked at all if the Saudi Arabian investment fund decided to go to FSU, because one, they can curry favor, and two, they can do it for probably much cheaper than what they got done for the PGA. Probably cheaper than even one-year offer for Kylian Mbappe. The $770 million, it's going to take way, way less than that for them to get the job done at FSU. I can guarantee that. So it's economical, gets you in front of a new audience that you can schmooze up to. Makes a lot of sense for Saudi Arabia. Makes zero sense if you're actually trying to invest as far as private equity is concerned. The conference realignment is not done, though. This might have been the biggest salvo thus far, but more is coming. I can almost assure you of that. College football is going to look very differently. They got a lot of things to figure out as far as the playoff is concerned, how they're going to structure that. I mean, the initial, structure they put out of the playoff bids was 5 automatic qualifiers, or 6 automatic qualifiers, that being the winner of the SEC, Big 12, Big 10, ACC, and Pac-12, plus the highest ranked non-Power 5 conference champion. That's not a model. Well, first off, it's not a model that I think is good at all. It's gonna, at some point, you're gonna get the number 18 team in the country that happens to be in the group of 5 in the playoff because they're the highest ranked non-Power 5 team that won their conference. That's gonna be a poo-poo dog shit sort of structure, if you will. Hate that. But if there's one good thing that could come out of this whole debacle of conference realignment, sure, college football as we know it or knew it is going to be dead after this season, but at the same time, it might lead to them just, doing for the 12-team playoff, just the top 12 ranked team, which I already think is probably stupid. I mean, you're going to get a copious amount of blowouts in the first round anyways, pretty much no matter which way you slice it. But it's better to have the top 12 in there than for somehow the number 20th ranked team in the country just sneaking in there for God knows what reason because they decided everyone has to be included no matter what. Let's just take the top 12 teams. Hell, if it were up to me, you could cut that in half. 6 teams is really all you need because anyone after 6 is not winning the national championship. I've had arguments with people before about this. I absolutely hate the way that conference realignment had, not conference realignment, the playoff is shaken out. They went from 4 to 12. They just they tripled the size of the field. They didn't have to triple the size of the field. They could have just gone to 6. I think 6 is I've been okay with expansion. I just didn't want to go all the way to 12 teams. I didn't want to go all the way to 8 teams, but I'd much rather have 8 than 12, and I'd much rather have 6 than what we have right now, but it is what it is. If nothing else, they'll make sure that it's just the top 12 teams in the playoff next year. I'm still going to watch college football. It feels like my childhood just died here over the last week or so as far as the college football fandom is concerned. But What are you going to do? I've already spent too much time on this story, though. We got a whole ass division to get to in the NFL, so let's just keep it moving. Get through these headlines real quick. Football's back. We had the not real football. It's just preseason football, but we had the Hall of Fame game last week. Had the Jets taking on the Browns. Absolute barnstormer out there. Kellen Mond still stinks. Mike Zimmer being proven right down after down after down. DTR actually got some juice. I like him a lot. I think he's probably going to be the backup there. And Kellen Mond is probably going to be out of a job if I had to guess, because just simply not that good. Maybe not the greatest Texas A&M product that's ever been out there. Probably not even close, I would say. It is what it is. You made some good backup money here for however long you've been in the league. It feels like that time is coming to an end here soon, but we are back. We have got football on TV once again. Am I watching it? No, I don't hate myself. Am I betting on it? What am I, a fucking sicko? I'm not betting on preseason football. And if you are betting on preseason football, to quote the great Michael Jordan, stop it. Get some help. Put down the phone. Throw it across the room if you have to. Stop betting on preseason football unless you hate your money. That's a wild decision right there. But it is football. It lets us know. I mean, a month from the day that I am recording this right now, a long month away, we will have opening night of the Detroit Lions versus the Kansas City Chiefs, and boy, am I looking forward to that right now. But all I know is that we got preseason football here. The juices are flowing again. I can smell it on the wind. Football is almost upon us, and I am just I'm giddy with excitement to get there, man. I just got goosebumps. Thinking about football being back, man. It's good. Football season, fall, best season of the year, man. I'll tell you what, from late August all the way to, through the new year, it's Christmas every single weekend, man. I'll tell you what, it's good to be back, ladies and gentlemen. It is good to be back. Moving on, though, Yannick Ngakoue signing a 1-year deal, $10.5 million with the Bears. God damn it, pretty much fully guaranteed on that $10.5 million. But Bears got a solid pass rusher. I can only hope he plays terribly this season, and I'll just leave it at that. Bears fan, if you ask a Bears fan, this basically means they're a Super Bowl contender now. And honestly, I would tell them they're wrong. But the disappointment I'm going to see when they finally figure out they're a 7-10, 6-11 team, it's going to warm my heart ever so much more with all these expectations they're just putting up there. So I'm just going to sit back and wait, because I have a good feeling I'm going to be vindicated in the long run on that one. Cam Jordan signed a 2-year, $27.5 million extension with the Saints. That'll likely keep him in New Orleans for the remainder of his career. He's going to be a full career with the New Orleans Saints. Probably a future Hall of Famer. If I had a vote, he would be a future Hall of Famer just based on the level of consistency. The overall production, the way he's come out year after year after year and been a borderline, if not straight up all-pro caliber player. One of the most consistent players in the entire league during his time. Love to see him stay down there in New Orleans. Love to see it. Thought there were points where I thought, hey, maybe he would no longer be a New Orleans Saint, just based on cap stuff. Like that's ever mattered with Mickey Loomis. It basically might as well not exist with that guy. But between cap stuff and just like his contracts over the years, I thought there was a chance that they cut Cam Jordan and he would have to go elsewhere. But this pretty much seals that he will be in New Orleans for the rest of his career. You love to see it. Hopefully he stays in New Orleans after he retires too. That'd be a fantastic story. Good for him for getting that done. Up next, Bears also signed tight end Mercedes Lewis, bolster that run blocking behind Cole Kmet, and this is kind of the model in the NFL right now. You get a pass catching tight end, and then you have a run blocking tight end, so that pass catching tight end can kind of split out more, not worry so much about those run blocking duties, those arduous run blocking duties for the pass catching tight end there. I think that's a good pickup. Ngakoue's a good pickup too for the Bears. I just wish he didn't sign with the Bears because they stink. Outside of that, the league changed its personal conduct policy so they can investigate and punish incoming rookies for actions taken in college. Many people are pointing to examples like Joe Mixon, maybe even Aaron Hernandez from back in the day. I don't know if Kareem Hunt had something like this coming out of college. I think he might have, but people are thinking about like the violent crimes in this sort of thing. I'm looking directly at the gambling side of this because we've heard, I haven't really talked about it on this show, but we've heard over the course of the last several weeks, couple months, about just a spate of college players going out there and gambling, not only on their own sport but their own team. You had an Iowa kicker, Iowa kicker betting on the under for the Cyhawks game last year. Had a backup quarterback for Iowa State betting on that game as well. He might have actually been the one that bet the under. I can't quite remember which one it was, but he had players on both teams betting on games last year. I mean, just all over college football, you're hearing stories about players getting suspended, kicked off teams because they were gambling on the sport that they were playing. And I think more than any of those violent crimes are concerned, I think you're going to be seeing a lot of players getting indefinite suspensions before they even get in the league for what they've done gambling on the sport. I think that is the main reason why the league changed their personal conduct policy in this instance, because they simply, they have got to bring down the hammer with the force of a speeding comet. That is basically what they've got to do if they want to have any hope of keeping the integrity of the game with how prevalent sports gambling is in this day and age. I understand it. I'm honestly on their side with how this whole thing goes. You just have to bring the hammer down if you want to disincentivize it definitively. And there still will be people that fail the idiot test, but you're going to have way more people that pass it, and you're going to send a very clear message that, hey, if you want to play the sport, you simply cannot gamble on it. And that's a final end of sentence. Can't do it anymore. Outside of that, look for more gambling suspensions in college, by the way. That's going to be a difficult one to stop, especially with college kids being dumb as college kids are. I would know I was one at one point. Keep an eye out for that because someone on your team is likely going to be suspended for it at some point here in the nearish future. It's just the way this thing is going to go as sports gambling becomes more prevalent in our country. Outside of that, Alvin Kamara suspended 3 games after he, may remember he pled no contest to that assault charge stemming from back in Vegas. I believe a Colts corner as well was suspended 3 games in that case as well. Basically, slap on the wrist, come back and play the final 14 games. Kind of what I expected. I mean, it didn't seem like the guy was severely injured in a long-term permanent way. It was obviously serious, beat the shit out of a guy, but at the same time, yeah, it's one of those things where we've had lots of worse things happen to players in the NFL, and they have gotten basically the same sort of treatment as far as 3 games is concerned. So I think 3 games is fair for Alvin Kamara. Vikings defensive lineman James Lynch, kind of a standout last year as a rookie, stepped up in a big way for that defensive line. He has torn his ACL, will be out for the remainder of the season. Before the season even starts, that's a big blow for the interior D-line, man. I mean, we're already kind of thin. We just lost, I forget the guy's name, but signed a big old contract with the Browns here over the past offseason. I apologize to that man. My brain is absolute fried eggs right now. I don't know what the hell's even going on, so I apologize to that man. But we lost a big-time free agent this year on the defensive line and the interior. Didn't add a whole lot. We added Marcus Davenport on the outside, but as far as the interior is concerned, we kind of just stayed pat with what we had, and now we lose one of the key players in the middle there. This is going to be a real test of how good of a play caller Brian Flores is this year because, man, he has got some holes in the roster. Let me tell you what. They are doing him no favors as far as drafting players, as far as those players staying healthy. The defense, personnel-wise, good luck to you, Brian. You've got your work cut out for you. Certainly hoping for the best, though. Let's not get it twisted there. Final headline, Chiefs free agent acquisition. Actually, no, second to last headline. Sorry about that. Chiefs free agent acquisition, Charles Omenihu, coming over from the San Francisco 49ers. He's getting slapped with a 6-game suspension. Didn't immediately see what the suspension was for because I was in Dallas all week and having a good time with the boys. Didn't have time to look at the headlines outside of suspended for 6 games. So I'm going to imagine it was just, just some dumb shit, maybe a PED suspension. Maybe he was gambling in the facility on a different sport. I don't know. Either way, 6 games hurts, definitely hurts, especially with the impending, lingering Chris Jones situation over there as far as the holdout is concerned. But, you'll get him after 6 games, and you still got Patrick Mahomes, still got some solid players in that defense, so I'm not ultra worried about it. It does hurt, though. Might make the first 6 games a little bit harder when it's all said and done. Might force the Chiefs' hands when it comes to just forking over the cash to Chris Jones that he deserves, because pay that man his money. He's the most valuable player on that defense for sure. Final headline here. A brisk 30 minutes into the podcast here before I even talking about the topic at hand here. But let's get to this final headline. Panthers signed defensive end Justin Houston to a 1-year deal. He had 9.5 sacks last year with the Ravens. Provides another pass rusher on that team. That defense, you pick up Ejiro Evero as the new defensive coordinator. You retain your biggest players. You add some more in there. Add Von Bell in free agency as well. I believe Von Bell was where I believe he went to the Panthers. Either him or the other safety out there whose name escapes me at this point. But add more in free agency, add a great defensive coordinator, already have a great corner in J.C. Horn. This defense is shaken up to be absolutely fierce. Possible top 10 unit next year. Watch out for it. And they just added another solid rotational pass rusher in there. I doubt he's going to start right off the bat unless Yetur Gross-Matos really does just stink that goddamn bad. But open to being proven wrong on that for sure. Justin Houston will, by all means, contribute pretty heavily, though, I would have to imagine. With that, though, let's get out of these headlines, man. Let's talk about the NFC West here. We got to get going if we want to keep this under 2 hours. Had to quickly sit back up there for a second. I just noticed I've been just slowly sinking down into my chair as such. Just gotta rein that in every so often. So with that said, let's talk about the NFC West, shall we? Just going down in last year's division standings orders, as is customary in this segment. So we'll start off with the 49ers, the clear-cut best team from last year, and maybe the strongest team returning in the NFC this season. Definitely the strongest in the division right now. Not to say that the Seattle Seahawks haven't improved, but we'll talk about them in just a second. Even with the uncertainty at quarterback, I know Brock Purdy's been clear. Looks like he's going to start the season. Wondering how much he's going to actually play in the preseason, but it looks like he's going to be the shoe-in for starter once the season starts. But even so, you got uncertainty. I mean, Brock Purdy working back after that UCL tear. Alternatives being Sam Darnold and Trey Lance in that order, apparently. I guess Trey Lance is just abjectly terrible. Sorry about it. I hate to hear that. I hate to hear that you traded 3 first-round picks for him, too. That must hurt. But I digress on that front. This is still a really solid offense, though. I mean, the most QB-proof system in football for my money. I've said it before. I'll say it till I'm proven wrong, quite frankly, because I've seen no evidence to the contrary. I mean, Kyle Shanahan brought Nick Mullins into the lineup. Not even that. Nick Mullins wasn't even the worst QB. They brought in C.J. Beathard and were serviceable on offense. They were top half of the league in offense with C.J. Beathard as the quarterback. And I'm here to tell you, C.J. Beathard is not a very good quarterback. Nick Mullins is an okay at best quarterback. They were above average with Nick Mullins at quarterback, in fact, as the quarterback of the offense. That's how good Kyle Shanahan is at calling plays, making a defense absolutely fear for their lives at any given snap. I mean, just putting them in a pretzel as far as what they're doing is concerned, how their thinking is concerned. And yes, Nick Bosa is in the midst of a holdout, but I wouldn't expect that to stretch into the season, quite frankly. And even if it does, well, it's not going to. With him back on the field, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say, back in the fold, this defense looks every bit as potent as it did last year, even with the loss of D'Amico Ryans and a few secondary pieces as well. They still look every bit as strong. Do they still got Fred Warner? Yes. Do they still got Nick Bosa? Yes. They're going to have both of those guys in the lineup. So with that in mind, I have no worries about the San Francisco 49ers. And I mean, the Nick Bosa situation might last a little bit longer than, say, a Chris Jones might, or any of the other hold. Zach Martin's holding out as well with the Dallas Cowboys, if I'm not mistaken. In those situations, the $50,000 a day fine for missing camp is not rescindable. Since Nick Bosa is on a rookie contract, the team can rescind those fines. He's not have to pay a dime of those fines when it's all said and done. So basically, it's a risk-free holdout for him. They're going to rescind those fines if and when they come to a deal as part of the deal when it's all said and done. So it might take a little bit longer, but I think it's going to get done when it's all out there. They did replace D'Amico Ryans, by the way, with hot young savvy DC with a vet. I'm not even sure what I'm trying to say, man. I'm dead. I'm dead inside. I'm dead in the brain right now. Absolutely brain dead right now. But they replaced the hot young defensive coordinator with Steve Wilks. That's what I was trying to say. Steps in after a successful interim head coaching stint with the Panthers. Niners are primed and ready for yet another run at a title this season as far as I'm concerned. And Steve Wilks is going to be a big-time part of that because he's an elite defensive coordinator. Could not have asked for a better guy to replace D'Amico Ryans with, especially with the personnel in the front seven that he has to work with. I think this is going to be another solid unit. May not be the best defense in the league again, but I think it'll definitely be a top 10 unit, if nothing else, because you've got such elite talent across the board over there. I got no worries about the 49ers on either side of the ball, quite frankly. With that said, let's take a look at their personnel, shall we? We've got to scroll through all of these open tabs. Some may ask why I have so many open tabs, and I would answer, I have no idea. I don't need all these tabs. I just got them open. You never know, just in case, huh? Get out of here. Open up. I'm absolute brain in a pretzel right now. I don't even remember where I got all these screenshots at. I'll give you one guess where I had the screenshots at. It's in my Notes app. Not my Notes app. Again, that's where I looked in the first place. It's in my Photos app. So let's look at the San Francisco 49ers here. My goodness, I am just absolutely falling apart at the seams. But first off, let's look at the draft. They got first pick they had in the third round because, you may remember they traded for a man named Christian McCaffrey that actually absolutely put jetpacks in the offense last season and made it just, unstoppable when it was all said and done. So first pick they had was in the third round. They draft Jair Brown, a safety out of Penn State. He should see some prominent playing time back there. They get Jake Moody in the third round as far as a kicker. So he will be asked to step in. That's very high to draft the kicker. They obviously think very highly out of him. Coming out of Michigan, has big-time playoff game experience, which I'm sure factored very heavily into John Lynch making this pick. Obviously, they needed a new kicker, but you can get a kicker in the seventh round if you truly want one. They get him all the way in the third round, which is wild to think about, but shows you the expectations they have for this kid. Third round as well, they take tight end out of Alabama, Cameron Letu. Easy for me to say. He'll be playing backup behind George Kittle, but it's good depth to have back there. Deep tight end class, so I would imagine he's going to play some sort of role in the offense, even if that is more of a blocking role than a receiving role. In the fifth round, that was their next pick. They had Darrell Luter Jr., cornerback out of South Alabama, and that should pretty much tell you everything you need to know about the name recognition after this. They get a Georgia player in the fifth round as well. Robert Beal, defensive end. Good for him. Good for all the players that are drafted out of Georgia. All 15 of them, it feels like, in this draft alone. But yeah, that's basically the draft for the San Francisco 49ers. Later round picks, you don't know their names, so why even get into that unless it's a running back or something along those lines. Look at the free agency here. Obviously, big-time loss. They lose Mike McGlinchey in free agency to the Denver Broncos. That one's going to be tough to step up. But with the confusion that the Kyle Shanahan defense sows, or Kyle Shanahan offense sows in the defensive side of the ball, playing offensive line is objectively easier in this system than it is in just about any other system when it's all said and done. So hopefully they can replace Mike McGlinchey adequately, but that's a big-time piece to lose. They bring in Javon Hargrave on that front four. way to just lean into your strengths, right? I mean, they were already one of the best defensive lines in the entire league. Let's just go out and get the best defensive tackle in free agency this year. They land Javon Hargrave out of Philadelphia, double-digit sack getter last year, absolute bona fide monster there. It's going to be rushing from the inside, taking some pressure off of Nick Bosa, or Nick Bosa taking pressure off of him. Either way, opposing quarterbacks are in trouble, I'll tell you that right now. Lose Jimmy Garoppolo to the Raiders, but that's okay. Samson Ebukam, they lose to the Indianapolis Colts. That's some depth that you lose out of that front four. Javon Hargrave, though, I think you'll take that there in the middle for losing Samson Ebukam. You'd love to have Ebukam back, but having Hargrave's not too bad either, I'll tell you that much. They lose Jimmy Ward to the Houston Texans following his old defensive coordinator over there to Houston. That's a big time loss. Jimmy Ward was a solid safety back there. He's gonna up there in years, but a guy that you'd love to still have around in San Francisco. He's gonna be kind of tough to replace if I had to guess. They bring in Isaiah Oliver, cornerback out of San Francisco. Lose Emmanuel Mosley as well to Detroit. Another big time loss there. Really the losses that they had, the biggest losses were in the secondary this year more than anything else. Steve Wilkes is going to have his hands full as far as replacing all that has gone out the door there. They lose oh goodness gracious, tackle Daniel Brunskill to the Tennessee Titans. I believe that's the other tackle opposite of Mike McGloin. Actually, no, because they have Trent Williams there. Maybe it's tackle underneath of Trent Williams. I don't know. Either way, they lose another tackle, another offensive lineman in Daniel Brunskill. They lose Azeez Al-Shaair to the Tennessee Titans as well. That's kind of a big depth loss in the secondary. Yes, you still got Dre Greenlaw and you got Fred Warner, but having Azeez Al-Shaair in the back pocket was just unfair over the last couple seasons. They won't have him out there anymore. They signed the redheaded madman Sam Darnold to be probably their backup quarterback this year. They have Hassan Ridgeway, defensive tackle, leaves for Houston following the old defensive coordinator D'Amico Ryans as well. They bring in Cleveland Farrell. They bring in John Feliciano from the Giants of last season. And after that, you're talking about Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles. Who hasn't heard of Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles? He's sticking around with the San Francisco 49ers. I had no idea he was on the 49ers. And, of course, you got Ross Dwelley sticking around as well. 3-deep tight end room. Big time tight end pickup in Ross Dwelley. But we've squeezed all the juice out of that free agency. So let's look at the depth chart right quick. And for the offense, Brock Purdy is slated to be the starter, and he's already been cleared medically, so he should be good to go for week 1. That's your starter, and Trey Lance is slated as the third-string quarterback right now, which, boy, that's maybe one of the worst draft picks of all time at this point. I hate to say it, but I hope for the best for the kid. I'll just put it to him that way. I hope he gets traded somewhere where they're going to give him a chance. Teddy Bridgewater signing with the Detroit Lions. You hate to see it. You hate to see it, man. I don't want to root against Teddy, but you're now my mortal enemy, so I basically have to. You can suck my dick, Teddy Bridgewater. I still love you very, very much. If you want to come back to Minnesota at any time, we will embrace you with arms wide open, as the song goes, if you will. But since you're on the Detroit Lions, since you decided to go in the division, you're on my shit list for now. But once you leave, we're all good. Let's be honest here. How can you hate Teddy Bridgewater? But back to the issue at hand. Brock Purdy, starting quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers. Christian McCaffrey, the starting running back, with Elijah Mitchell and Jordan Mason as the second and third running backs. You got Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Jawan Jennings as your wide receivers, 1 through 3. You got Ray McLeod sitting back there as kind of a deep threat sort of return guy. And then some people I haven't really heard of. Chris Conley, I know him. Danny Gray, don't know who that guy is. And that's your 6 deep at wide receiver. The first 3, at the very least the first 2, very difficult for defenses, I'll tell you that right now. The versatility has absolutely killed opposing teams over the last couple years. Obviously, at tight end, you got George Kittle, with Cameron Latu being the backup as of right now. What more is there that needs to be said about that absolute specimen of a man out of Iowa playing tight end for the San Francisco 49ers? He is one of the best, if not the best, tight ends in the entire league. Ball. He's not better than Travis Kelce, so we can put that to bed right now. But at the very worst, a top 5 tight end in the entire league. More like a top 3 tight end in the entire league, if I had to say. Kyle Juszczyk returns at fullback. What else is new? The guy is an absolute Swiss Army knife. He can do so much for that offense, and Kyle Shanahan uses him in a lot of fun, creative ways to kind of create problems for the defense, as he does so well. And on the offensive line, the big question mark for this season, obviously not Trent Williams. We all know what we're getting with Trent Williams there at left tackle, so we'll leave that there. Left guard, Aaron Banks. Center, Jake Brendel, returning from last season. Right guard, Spencer Burford, also returning from last season. And at right tackle, stepping in for Mike McGlinchey, you got Colton McKivitz taking over there and trying to step up in a big way. And I don't know if the offensive line is going to be as good as they were last season, but I think the way this team runs the ball, they're going to be put in a lot of favorable situations to have a lot of success when it comes to moving the ball down the field. I do not think the offensive line is going to be a problem. You got the most important position locked up, and that is the left tackle. Probably got the best left tackle in the entire game in Trent Williams. So as long as the other 4 pieces on that offensive line play to a reasonably high level, you're going to be just fine when it comes to, regular season, postseason. I think this team is going to be fine either way, so long as the quarterback doesn't get their UCL absolutely severed with a paring knife by Hassan Reddick when it's all said and done. But barring that, you got once again the makings of a top 10 offense in all likelihood. Brock Purdy, all he has to do is just be the pass first point guard and just distribute to his weapons and watch the magic happen. With Christian McCaffrey in this offense, especially assuming he stays healthy, this is going to be one of the more potent offensive units in the league, like it has been every single year under Kyle Shanahan, no matter who the QB is for that matter. As far as the defense is concerned, got Drake Jackson at left defensive end, Javon Hargrave at the left defensive tackle. Eric Armstead returning at right defensive tackle, Nick Bosa as the right defensive end, currently quote-unquote out, but they'll get it done. I'm not worried about that at all. As your linebackers, you got Dre Greenlaw, Fred Warner, and then Oren Burke stepping into the starting lineup as well as the strong side linebacker. As far as the secondary is concerned, Travarius Ward still there. Talanoa Hufanga, big breakout star from last season, he's still there. Deshaun Gibson stepping in at free safety for Jimmy Ward in his absence. And Diamador Lenore stepping in opposite of Travarius Ward in the Emmanuel Mosley spot to help kind of pick up the slack. And if there was a concern about this defense, certainly not the front seven. I'm not particularly familiar with Drake Jackson's work, but I'll tell you right now, Javon Hargrave, Eric Armstead, Nick Bosa, you can do a whole lot worse in that front three. Also, you've got Javon Kinlaw there for depth. You got Cleveland Farrell, former top 10 pick there. Drafted too high, but former top 10 pick. That never goes away as depth as well. You got some good players just sitting back there on the front four, and Dre Greenlaw and Fred Warner are probably the best linebacker duo in the entire league. I've got absolutely zero questions about the front seven. If there was a nit to pick, it is with this secondary. You still got Hufanga, you still got Travarius Ward, but where's the depth behind those guys? I guess Tashawn Gibson is a serviceable safety back there at free safety. Do we trust Diamador Lenore to be a true number 2 corner, getting those targets opposite of Travarius Ward? Do we trust the depth of Ambry Thomas and Isaiah Oliver back there behind those 2 corners? I don't know. I think the front 7 may be good enough to make up for that. But I do think the secondary is pretty objectively worse than it was last year. So I don't think they'll be, like I said, I don't think they'll be as good as they were in 2023 or 2022, whichever one it was. But what I do think is that the front 7 will make up for it in a way that they'll still probably be a top 10 unit. And there's a good chance that, once again, they're top 10 in both offense and defense. Would not be shocked at all. I mean, like I said, that front seven, best in all of football as far as I'm concerned. So you got a little bit of leeway that you may not have otherwise in the secondary, and you still got a legit number one bona fide corner in Travarius Ward there. Still got a very good safety in Talanoa Hufanga, so this should still be a bona fide, comfortably top 10 unit so long as Steve Wilks shows up as advertised, and I got no reason to think that he won't. So with that said, let's talk about predictions, shall we? And we're not talking about headlines. I just went to the wrong part of the notes app there. Did it again. All right. Let's talk about floor first and foremost. I could see this team getting 10 wins. I mean, 10-7, it would be absolutely shocking, sure. But I mean, you look at what they've got. If Christian McCaffrey can't stay healthy, which he's been known to do in the past, maybe they don't have quite as much of a potent offense. If the secondary just completely falls apart, if the QB situation, if Brock Purdy isn't as good as he once was last season, if the QB play is just subpar in general, 10-7 could conceivably happen. That's basically if everything falls apart and implodes right before our very eyes. They're still getting 10 wins. My ceiling for them, still 14. I think they're a really, really good core of players. I think, like I said in the initial intro, I think they're probably the strongest team in the NFC still. At the very least, one of the strongest teams in the NFC. It's basically just them and the Eagles once again this year competing at the top, with the Cowboys sneaking in back there like, hey, you remember us? And all of us laughing like, ha, 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 come talk to me when you win a playoff game, boys. But, you know, it's basically the 49ers and the Eagles once again. The 49ers are still very, very good. So with that, my prediction for them is 13-4 this year. I think they're going to be very good. I think they're going to challenge for a number one overall seed. I'll give it away. Spoiler alert, I think they're probably going to win the NFC West. I think it's going to be a close division with the Seattle Seahawks. Talk about them in just a second, but I think they're going to win the NFC West. I think they're going to push for a 1 seed, and if they get home field advantage, I'm interested to see what Brock Purdy can do in a playoff setting where Hassan Reddick isn't trying to slice his UCL with a butter knife or a much sharper knife than a sharpened butter knife, if you will, to get the UCL completely severed. I'm very excited to see what happens. I mean, you just saw my brain completely short circuit there for a second. I'm entirely too far into the day to be thinking coherent thoughts. So let's just keep it moving, shall we? Prediction for the 49ers, 13-4. Looking forward to seeing them this season. I think they'll still be a really, really strong team. For this next team, we have got the Seahawks. Seahawks were the biggest positive surprise last season. They went from me predicting them to finish in the bottom 10, maybe a number one overall pick, to making the playoffs and still picking in the top 5 because thank you to the Broncos for sucking so bad. They are sneaky up on one of this year's, though. What am I talking about, though? They're not sneaking up on anyone this year. My goodness. Can I just not talk or read right now? But that's just kind of the way life is sometimes. They are very good. They were good last season. They're going to be better this season. We'll get into specific personnel here in a bit, but somehow they retained Shane Waldron as their offensive coordinator. I thought for sure after the job he did with Geno Smith and that offense last year with the pieces that were in place, I thought for sure he would be going in the wind by now, taking some head coaching job after that blowout performance. He did not. He is still in Seattle for another season, probably just one more season, because I imagine him and Ben Johnson over there with the Detroit Lions, probably just a 1-year rental going forward here. You'd be pleasantly surprised if he comes back for another year after this one, but you still got Shane Waldron in the building, and that comes with a great deal of offensive prowess. Might have been one of the steals of this offseason, keeping him in the building. Big time get for them keeping offensive coordinator Shane Waldron. They did lose Sean Desai, who was the de facto defensive coordinator last season, and they weren't world beaters on that side of the ball last year, so that would be my biggest concern for them. They do still bring back some key young players. Obviously, we'll get to that in just a second, but my favorite freak of last year's draft, Tariq Woolen, is coming back. Obviously, he will be there. You got some more good young players back there, and they just drafted a very good corner in the first round as well, but I'm getting ahead of myself. That being said, really good young core on both sides of the ball. could definitely still see them in the mix for a playoff spot in the NFC. So with that, let's look at the personnel moves, shall we? As far as the draft is concerned, alluded to that cornerback at number 5. They took Devin Witherspoon. I'm guessing it's Devin. It looks like a Devin here on the screen. I'm just stupid. He's going to be maybe not their number 1 cornerback, but you already had Tariq Woolen. You're going to have Devin Witherspoon sitting opposite of Tariq Woolen now. Solid pickup in the secondary. Also in the first round, with their actual first round pick at 20, they take Jackson Smith-Njigba, who is clearly the number 1 wide receiver in this draft. I guess there's not a quote-unquote clear-cut star in this draft, but what they're going to be asking Jackson Smith-Njigba to do, basically playing in the slot with Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf on the outside. Fantastic fit with what's going to be happening as far as the offense is concerned. I think Jackson Smith-Njigba is going to absolutely eat teams alive out of the slot. Going to be damn near uncoverable with the way he's able to run routes and quickly get out of breaks. I mean, his quickness numbers at the combine just blew all the other wide receivers out of the water in this draft. So I love Jackson Smith-Njigba in this offense with Shane Waldron for that one more year. I think Geno Smith has got a better group of weapons than what he had last season. But on the defensive side of the ball, in the second round, they got Derek Hall helping out that side of the ball immensely. They needed interior defensive line. They lost that in free agency. And they seemingly replenished it early in the draft, but they're going to be asking him to do a lot of stuff very early. They already had I forget the guy's name. They drafted him in the second round last year. He's got a fun name to say. It's not Odafe Owe. He plays for the Ravens. That's definitely not the guy that I'm thinking of. But a guy that they drafted last year high in the second round didn't exactly work out great throughout the course of last season. So you're hoping Derek Hall works out in a little bit easier, better way for you. But good pickup in the second round for what their needs were. Also in the second round, they got Zach Charbonnet, running back out of UCLA. Big time back. I think he kind of got hurt here, kind of nicked up in training camp. Not too worried about that, though. Him and Kenneth Walker should be a fantastic 1-2 punch there in the backfield. Again, just bolstering that offense more and more, leaning into their strengths. I think their offense should be markedly better this season, even from what it was last year. Anthony Bradford, offensive guard out of LSU, they took in the 4th round. Cameron Young, defensive tackle out of Mississippi State, they also took in the 4th round. Hail State, baby. Love to see it happen. But wish you were still on Mississippi State. We could have 20 of 22 starters be seniors this year if Cameron Young was on the team. But love to see him drafted nonetheless. Love seeing my boys succeed in the NFL. I don't know Cameron Young, but he's my boy because he went to my college, my alma mater, if you will. And then outside of that, they drafted Kenny McIntosh, the GOAT out of Georgia, running back out of there in the 7th round. And they just... If you want to know what the Seahawks are about, they will absolutely never sign a running back in free agency, probably never sign a running back to a second contract, and just exclusively draft running backs. They drafted 2 in this draft. They drafted 1 last time around. Basically, 3 deep of running backs that they just did not pay and are on rookie deals. That's the modern NFL for you right now. That's the model that is most successful. With that said, though, that's basically the draft for them. So let's look at the free agents. They bring in Draymond Jones from Denver. Solid pass rusher there with the Broncos last season. Should be a boon for them at defensive end this season in Seattle. Julian Love, the safety from New York Giants, really popped onto the scene last year, getting paid by Seattle this year. That's a good pickup as well in the secondary, really bolstering that even more so they get Devin Witherspoon, got Julian Love, got Tariq Woolen last year. Really coming together there on the back end for the Seattle Seahawks. Jaron Reed, they bring in from the Green Bay Packers, had a solid season there if I'm not mistaken. Bobby Wagner making the triumphant return to the Rams. He comes from the Los Angeles Rams to the Seattle Seahawks, where he's always belonged. He's back on a 1-year deal. Pretty solid money on that 1-year deal, too. He'll be stepping right back into his old role like he never even left. Drew Lock sticking around with Seattle as the backup quarterback. Not big news there. Travis Homer, he was a running back for them last year. He'll be now with the Chicago Bears this time around. Stupid Bears, they probably made a terrible pickup with Travis Homer if I had to guess. But, unbiased opinion there, obviously. Quentin Jefferson, defensive tackle, they lost to the New York Jets. Devin Bush, they bring in from Pittsburgh, inside linebacker over there. Cody Barton, linebacker, they lost to Washington. We'll lose Al Woods, defensive tackle, to the New York Jets as well. Poona Ford, defensive end, goes to the Buffalo Bills. Evan Brown, guard, they bring in from Detroit. I don't know if he was a starting guard because it's hard offensive lineup to crack there, but good depth in the interior there with going with those standout rookie tackles from last season. Marquise Goodwin going from Seattle to Cleveland, losing that deep threat, but you did pick up Jackson Smith-Njigba, so all water under the bridge, if I had to say. Rashad Penny didn't get paid by the Seahawks. That's a big spoiler alert there, but he goes to the Philadelphia Eagles. Probably going to play a pivotal role there if he can stay healthy. That's the big if. Throughout Rashad Penny's entire career, he's been spectacular when he's out there, just not out there nearly enough. Mario Edwards, defensive end they bring in from the Tennessee Titans. Ryan Neal, strong safety, they lose to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. LJ Collier, defensive end, they lose to the Cardinals. Jonathan Abram, not much of a loss, but they lose him to New Orleans. Love you, buddy. Went to school at the same time as you, just not a very good safety. Good for you for getting that first-round contract, though. And they also lose Kyle Fuller, cornerback, that says center right there. He's not a center. I'll tell you right now, Kyle Fuller's not a center. They lose him to the Denver Broncos, though. Good pickup for their secondary, kind of a key loss for the Seattle Seahawks secondary, though. That is your personnel moves there for you in a nutshell. So with that, let's bring it all together. Make this a depth chart pie here, shall we? Let's start off with the offense, as we always do. Geno Smith at starting quarterback, Kenneth Walker at running back with Zach Charbonnet and DJ Dallas being the top three there as far as the backfield is concerned. Kenny McIntosh is the fourth string running back, but DJ Dallas, who knows if he'll stick around, man. It's all up in the air at this point when they draft a running back in the 7th round. Crazy sentence to say there, but I digress. At wide receiver, still got DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett as your top two, with Jackson Smith and Njigba stepping in there as the number 3. Honestly, don't have a whole lot of depth outside of that. I mean, D. Eskridge, high draft pick last year, didn't exactly work out. Also suspended for the first 6 weeks of the season, I want to say. So, going to have to figure out what's going on after him. They got Derek, I don't know, Jesus Christ, E-K-E, my goodness, D-A-R-E-K-E. You figure out how to pronounce that name. Derek Young and Cody Thompson are your other 2 wide receivers there after D. Eskridge. No idea what it's going to look like there depth-wise, but Jackson Smith-Njigba slots in very nicely with what DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett do, quite frankly. I think he's going to play very well this season. May not be necessarily a fantasy darling, but he's going to get the chains moving a lot of times, and he's going to create some easy completions for Geno Smith that they had not had at certain times throughout the course of last season. I like the makeup of this team. And, of course, Noah Fant, who they got in that Russell Wilson trade last season, is still at tight end for him. Will Disley being the backup tight end. Fullback, Nick Bellore. Never heard of him before, but have a good one, Bellore. And then you get to the offensive line. Mississippi State product from last year they drafted in the first round. Charles Cross at left tackle. Got his lunch eaten at times towards the end of last year, but I expect for him to come on strong in this new season. At left guard, you got Damian Lewis. Center, you got Evan Brown. Right guard, Phil Haynes. And if you want to see a question mark on this offensive line, it's right there in the middle. What are they going to do there? Is it going to be high-level play? You get a little bit more leeway when you're on the right tackle. Rookie from last year, Abraham Lucas, I believe they got him in either the 2nd or the 3rd round. Either way, looks like the Seattle Seahawks got about lucky as hell, and they got their offensive tackle situation locked up for probably the next 5 to 7 years, give or take. Like, they really lucked out in ways that you do not see happen ever when it comes to as far as getting 2 starting offensive tackles in the same draft. That gives you a little leeway in the center to kind of tinker around and play around, but That's going to be the big question mark. What is the interior going to look like? Because you know those two tackles are going to show up for a fight on every given Sunday when it's coming down to the wire there. Look at the offense overall, though. Kenneth Walker, the most powerful neck in all of football. Good wide receiver core, very solid top three there, even if the depth isn't quite what you would hope for it to be. Solid tight end, underrated tight end to Noah Fant over there, and two really good young tackles. I think this offense is going to be better than it was last year, especially with same starting quarterback for another year, same offensive coordinator for another year, that continuity with upgraded weapons, basically the same sort of offensive line coming back. I feel really good about this Seattle offense going forward, quite frankly. I think they're maybe a borderline top 10 unit this season. On the defensive side of the ball, big-time free agent Draymond Jones steps in at that left defensive end in the 3-4 scheme. Brian Moan, what a name there. Brian Moan is currently the nose tackle slated. He's got an out designation for whatever reason, probably on the PUP list. He'll come off it at some point. Then he got another free agent pickup in Jaron Reed at the right defensive end. Not the worst in the world. I don't know who the hell Brian Moan is, but hopefully he does well at nose tackle. If not, my boy Cam Young is currently sitting there waiting to take his spot behind him. But assuming he stays in there, he still got a defensive ends. Jones and Reed, not the worst duo to have in the world there on your front three. So, I mean, can't hate that. As far as the linebackers are concerned, got Jordan Brooks and Bobby Wagner in the middle. Solid duo there. Got Uchenna Nwosu, who just got paid. Big-time pass rusher coming off the edge there. You hope for a little bit higher sack numbers, but his pressure numbers, as far as they stay consistent from last year, make him one of the elite pass rushers in the entire league still, and a very good run defender to boot. And you got Darrell Taylor on the other side rushing opposite of Uchenna Nwosu. I'm not really sure about that right now, honestly. I mean, you get Derek Hall. I guess he's slated as a linebacker because he was a 4-3 defensive end in college, so makes sense that he would be a 3-4 outside linebacker in the NFL. I guess you're hoping that Derek Hall steps up at some point this season. Boye Mafa, that's the one I was thinking of and couldn't put my finger on that they drafted in the second round last year. You hope that he steps up in his second year in the system. Not a guarantee though. Basically, your whole front seven, as far as the pass rush is concerned, is hinging on Boye Mafa and Derek Hall to step up in a big way. If they don't, it's basically just going to be Uchenna Nwosu and Draymond Jones dragging the lifeless husk of that pass rush to as many sacks as they can get, which still they're good enough to probably get them middle of the pack as far as stack total is concerned, but they won't be in that upper echelon of front sevens if they don't have some big-time contributions from some young players that have not been on the stage before. Looking forward to seeing if they can do it. As far as the secondary is concerned, I mean, hopefully you're getting Jamal Adams back. Still got Quandre Diggs playing free safety, which should allow Jamal Adams to play more of that hybrid linebacker role that really he's meant to play. He's a blitzing safety and he's very good at blitzing, rushing the passer, really augmenting the pass rush and helping out in that way. He's at his best when he's just allowed to fly around, not worry about covering on the deep end quite as much. That's what you got Quandre Diggs back there for, though. And on the outside, Devin Witherspoon, Tariq Woolen, very, very solid young duo of corners. Haven't seen Devin Witherspoon play yet, but he was the number one cornerback in the draft on a lot of people's boards. There's a reason he was drafted number 5 overall, and they didn't go with a quarterback at that point. They could have gone with the quarterback, but they decided we're going to go with the best player that we think is available, and they thought Devin Witherspoon was the best available at 5, and Tariq Woolen coming back. I mean, need I remind everyone, 6'4", 4.2 running, absolute athletic freak. I think tied for the lead in interceptions last season as a rookie. Absolute freak of nature. Having him opposite of Devin Witherspoon, man, it's going to be fun to watch. And you got the late, great Michael Jackson playing cornerback behind Devin Witherspoon. Also Trey Brown on the other side. You got Julian Love sitting back there at safety as well. He'll probably start if Jamal Adams is not able to go out there early. But you look at this defense, kind of flipped from what we thought last year. I think in the beginning of last year, the secondary was just getting absolutely cooked. Obviously, they kind of stiffened up towards the middle and end of the season. But coming into this season, I think that secondary is really, really good, and the front seven has a few more question marks, but overall, do I think this is going to be a top 10 defense? I do not. I think there's going to be some holes in there that are going to be difficult to account for. But do I think they're going to be in the top half of the league? I absolutely, most certainly do. I think this is a really, really solid unit. I think the secondary is better than it was last year. I think the front seven has at the very least maintained in a lot of circumstances. They lose a lot on the front line, but they bring in a good amount as well. I think it's a solid defense, and I just feel like under Pete Carroll, they never really have a terrible defense. Well, that's a lie. They have had some terrible defenses, but I don't think this is going to be one of them. I think this is just a solid group of players that they put together on the defensive side of the ball. With that said, though, what am I thinking about them for this year? I'm thinking the floor is 8 wins. I think they could very easily go 8-9, miss the playoffs, just because their core is so young right now, and just because Geno Smith did it last year, I'm not going to just sit here and just write it in stone, in pen on whatever surface you want. I'm not going to etch it in there that he's going to be just immediately as productive as he was last season, just as good of a player as he was last season. I'm going to need to see it again. I'm not totally convinced. I could be very open to being proven wrong. I mean, I don't think he's going to necessarily be bad either. I'm just not totally 100% convinced that he's going to be the player that we saw last season, because we've not seen that up until last season, and he's a 30-some-year-old quarterback. So I'm going to need to see it one more time to be thoroughly convinced that Geno Smith has turned that corner and become the player that we thought he might be when he was the number one quarterback in whatever draft he came out in. But if he's not, and the defense has some holes in the front seven that are hard to fill, that make it difficult to defend teams, could very easily see them going 8-9, missing the playoffs with that record. Could also see them on the ceiling side of things going 11-6, man. I like the young core they've got together. I know it's young, but I like the young core they got together. And if Geno Smith plays like he did last season, he's got a better skill group than he had last season. Still got the same offensive coordinator. On the defensive side of the ball, they had a very good young corner in the top 5 of the draft. They had some good pass rushers on the front seven. Bring back Bobby Wagner. I mean, this could still very well be a playoff contending team. And my prediction for them is 10-7. I think there's a very real possibility they're either sitting there in anywhere from the 5 to 7 seeds as far as the wild card is concerned. Could very easily see them getting into the playoffs this year. I think 10-7 is the number, and I think that'll be good enough to get them there. What they do when they get to the playoffs, anyone's guess at this point, but I think they have a good enough team to get there, and a good enough team to, at the very least, go toe-to-toe with the 49ers in this coming season. Looking forward to seeing what they bring to the table. With that, though, we're an hour and 12 minutes into this podcast, and I still got 2 teams left to go, so we're just going to blaze right through the Rams and the Cardinals. Sorry, boys. Let's just call it what it is, though, with the Rams. The Rams had to pay the piper on the other side of the fuck them pick strategy. There's no two ways about it. When you trade that many picks away and bring in no young players, eventually the dam is going to break, and you're going to let a whole bunch of people go in free agency and have absolutely no one to replace them with. That is exactly what happened this offseason. They lost 9 of their 11 starters on defense, and the offensive line has not dramatically improved on the other side. I said it after the draft in the recklessly early predictions, but I'll say it again here. If not for the presence of Sean McVay, this may be my prediction for the number 1 overall pick this year. They are just not a very good team. And obviously, when you got Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp, that'll get you a win here and there too, which will keep you out of that number 1 pick territory. I don't even think they're the worst team in their entire division, quite frankly. But with McVay, however, and with the Stafford-Cooper Kupp connection returning to the fold, I think they'll punch ever so slightly above their weight class. Not much higher, mind you, but I think they'll be scrappy this year. I just think it's a good, well-coached team, even if the roster around that team does kind of stink. Even with all else is, Jesus Christ, even if all else is atrocious, at least you got Aaron Donald on defense, right? Maybe the only guy you got that you're excited about on defense, but at least you got Aaron Donald in there. You got Ernest Jones, he's the other returning starter from last year. Everyone else is gone, but you got those two. Who doesn't love Aaron Donald and Ernest Jones in equal measures and equal parts? But with that said, let's look at the personnel real quick. Starting off with the draft. In the second round, and by the way, this is the last year where the Rams won't have a first-round pick, so they'll get all the benefits of having that high bet draft pick that they're probably going to end up getting this year. But they had a second-round pick this year and a million mid-round picks, quite frankly. Starting off in the second round, though, they got offensive guard Steve Avila out of TCU, bolstering up the interior there, which sorely needed to be bolstered last season. The third round, they get the defensive end Byron Young out of Tennessee, bolstering the other side of the ball. Obviously, he's probably going to play a pivotal role because everyone left in the offseason. Third round, they get Kobe Turner, defensive tackle out of Wake Forest. Again, probably going to get in there because everyone left. Fourth round, they get Stetson Bennett, obviously. Who hasn't heard of the Stormin' QB out of Georgia? Decided to stay there for 7 years if he could. It probably could have stayed there another, but he would have been, forced out. This is kind of the way that these things are. What am I talking about? I don't know. We'll just keep it moving, though. They get Stetson Bennett there, who may be the heir apparent. We'll have to see what happens there with Matt Stafford. See if Stetson Bennett gets some playing time. I think if you look at Stafford's injury history, there's a good chance that Stetson Bennett does get some playing time, though. So we'll have to see how that all works out. Fifth round, they get Nick Hampton, outside linebacker out of Appalachian State. They get offensive tackle Warren McClendon in the fifth round out of Georgia. Might see the field if we're not. If I'm not mistaken, I think he might see the field at some point here. Get the craziest hair in college football, Zach Allen. Looks like he just licked an electric socket, tight end out of Clemson from last year. Puka Nacua, wide receiver out of BYU in the fifth round as well. Seemingly is going to feature prominently in that starting receiver rotation, which good luck. If Puka Nacua is cracking the starting lineup, not looking good there in the receiving room outside of Cooper Kupp, I'll tell you that right now. In the sixth round, we got Trevius Hodges Tomlinson, cornerback at TCU. Am I really going to go through all these other ones? Nah. I'm going to hit the last one, so might as well talk about Ochada Mathis out of Nebraska, defensive end they got in the sixth round, and they draft Zach Evans, running back out of Ole Miss as well in the sixth round. You may see him if Cam Akers is not able to stay on the field this coming year, but there's your draft right there. You got a bunch of picks this year, so hopefully they step up in a big way. Maybe help you punch a little bit above your weight class if you're on the Rams there. Let's look at the free agency though. You got Matt Gay leaving the LA Rams, signing a rich deal with the Indianapolis Colts. I believe the richest kicker deal of all time. Congratulations to him on that 4-year deal with the Colts. The Rams have to replace, I believe, everyone in the specialist room, though, so that should be good fun. Odell Beckham, he wasn't around last season, but you get it. Also lost him to the Baltimore Ravens this year. Nick Scott, one of the many defensive starters that left, he's going to Cincinnati. Might be starting when it's all said and done. Jeez, stop moving around the camera, Caleb. What are you doing? So yeah, they lose him to the Cincinnati Bengals, starting safety from last year. Leonard Floyd, outside linebacker, they lose to the Buffalo Bills. A new pass rusher over there to help pressure the QB. Bobby Wagner kind of bought him out, cut him, but they lose him to the Seattle Seahawks. A'Shawn Robinson, he goes to the New York Giants this offseason. Coleman Shelton, guard, they keep him around, so that's good. Quarterback Baker Mayfield, not the biggest loss in the world, but they do lose him to Tampa Bay. Long snapper Matthew Orzech, not the greatest name. That goes to old Jacob Bobenmoyer from last week, but long snapper as well. They lose him to Green Bay. That stinks. Riley Dixon, the punter there, they lose him to Denver, so had to replace both specialists in this offseason. Greg Gaines, defensive tackle, they lose him to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Taylor Rapp, the other safety, they lose to the Buffalo Bills. David Edwards, guard, they lose to the Buffalo Bills as well. Cornerback David Long, they lose to the Las Vegas Raiders. Brandon Powell, they lose wide receiver to the Minnesota Vikings. Demarcus Robinson, they bring in from Baltimore last season. Brett Rippon, who cares, but they bring him in at quarterback. Traven Howard, offensive linebacker, they lose to the Buffalo Bills. And the Wolfman, John Wolford, is joining Baker Mayfield down there in Tampa. With that, bring it all together. Here is your depth chart for the Los Angeles Rams. Matthew Stafford, obviously the starting quarterback. Cam Akers, the running back, with Kyron Williams and Zach Evans as the second and third, respectively, going into the season. Cooper Kupp is the number one receiver, obviously. Van Jefferson and Ben Skoranek being your 2 and 3. And, of course, you got Demarcus Robinson, Tutu Atwell, and Puka Nacua coming as your depth at wide receiver. God help him. That's the best way to say it. God help him. Tight end, still got Tyler Higbee there. Offensive line, you got a robust group of Joe Noteboom, Steve Avila, Brian Allen, Coleman Shelton, and Rob Havenstein. And, it's not the worst offensive line I've seen, but it's certainly not the best. I think it's probably a middle-of-the-road group when it's all said and done. And as far as the offense is concerned, I just have a hard time seeing them finish better than middle of the pack. I mean, you got Stafford, you got Cooper Kupp. That's probably where most of your players are going to be coming from. Maybe you get a run pop from Cam Akers every once in a while. Maybe Kyron Williams steps in there and shows some juice as well. Didn't really get a whole lot of playing time last year, I believe, after being drafted out. I want to say it was a USC product or something like that. Excuse me. But just basically overall, I mean, the offensive line's kind of mid. The wide receivers after Cooper Kupp, kind of mid. Running backs, kind of mid. Hell, even Matthew Stafford at this point in his career, kind of mid as far as I'm concerned. I mean, this is basically the middest of mid offenses that mids have mid before. So that's kind of what I'm thinking as far as the Los Angeles Rams offense is concerned. Defense, I mean, good luck. You got left defensive end Kobe Turner, nose tackle Bobby Brown. Right defensive end Aaron Donald, no questions there on that front seven, just because Aaron Donald, obviously. Byron Young is the weak side linebacker. Ernest Jones, the other returning starter at inside linebacker. Christian Roseboom as the right inside linebacker next to Ernest Jones. Michael Hoyt. I'm not going to try and pronounce that any other way. It's Michael Hoyt as far as I'm concerned at the other linebacker rushing opposite of Byron Young. Need I say more about the front seven? It's just Aaron Donald and the lifeless husk of the other six that he's dragging along right now. I mean, that is just good luck to you. I don't know where you're getting your pass rush from outside of Aaron Donald, quite frankly. And then the secondary doesn't get a whole lot better, guys. It's left corner Robert Rochelle, who I've definitely heard of. Strong safety Jordan Fuller. Free safety Russ Yeast infection. And then right cornerback Kobe Durant. And do I really need to even say the depth behind him? You've never heard of him. So I've never heard of him. You never heard of him. So let's just save ourselves all the time. This defense, by the grace of Aaron Donald, maybe they finish in the middle of the pack. But by God, is this some stinky poo-poo dog doo-doo right now. I do not feel good about them at all as far as what to expect from their defense. I think they'll be a bottom half of the league sort of defense. I think Aaron Donald's going to keep them from being the worst defense in the entire league. Probably help them out in the running statistics, if nothing else, and a little bit of pass rush. But my Lord, do they need some help on the defensive side of the ball. And I think Les Snead and the guys over there kind of understand, like, this is not a playoff defense. This is barely even a playoff offense when it's all said and done. So with that, I think you could probably guess what my prediction for the teams are going to be. But the floor, as far as I see it, is probably 5 wins, 5-11. I think there's only so bad you can be when you got that group of stars there with Stafford, Cooper Kupp, and Aaron Donald, plus Sean McVay being a very solid head coach when it's all said and done. That being said, this roster stinks. So 5-11, not at all out of the question. My ceiling for them, I don't even think is a winning record. I think 8-9 is probably the ceiling for them. And that's if I am just utterly floored, like their offense is middle of the pack. Their defense ends up being much better than I thought they would be. So middle of the pack. And then they just end up winning some games where they just straight up should not have won them. That'll get you to 8-9. Won't get you a playoff win, but it'll make you feel all warm and fuzzy inside going into the next season. My prediction, though, 7-10. I don't think they're going to be very good at all. I don't think they're going to be the worst team in the league, but I think they had every opportunity to if they didn't have Sean McVay and Matt Stafford in the lineup there. I think they're just not a very good roster this year. Like I said, you got to pay the piper when it comes to doing that fuck them pick strategy, and you got a Super Bowl out of it, so the pain is worth it when it's all said and done, I would imagine, for those fans out there just getting a Super Bowl. But 7-10. That's kind of how I'm feeling about the Rams this year. I just don't see a reality where they are a playoff team at the end of the year. And let's look at the poor, sad Cardinals. This year, let's just face it, it's already a wash. It's a culture-setting year for the Cards this season. It's for Jonathan Gannon to come on in there and establish some good habits and hopefully build into next season. But, I mean, Kyler Murray probably won't play for much of this season, if at all. And if he does play, there's a good chance it's in a capacity to maybe shop him around to other teams if you're aligned for the number one overall pick. Because, let's face it, if the Cardinals are sitting there at number one, you got a bit of a malcontent at quarterback who you've had character questions and leadership questions about from the get-go, basically, whether fair or not they've been out there. You got to pick between him and possibly a generational prospect at number one overall next season in Caleb Williams. I think you're picking Caleb Williams and you're taking all the picks you can for Kyler Murray just based on the promise that he showed. Because he showed promise. He's obviously a very talented quarterback. There's a reason he was taken number one overall at one point coming out of that Lincoln Riley offense as well. Someone's going to pay a good, decent price for him. But if they're sitting there at number one overall, it looks like they're going to get that number one overall pick. Wouldn't be surprised if they play Kyler Murray just to show, oh yeah, he's still got juice in the tank after that ACL. He can still come contribute for your team if you pay the right draft compensation to us, in addition to maybe some good players as well to bring in this young, talented quarterback. Outside of that, though, they're going to be starting like Colt McCoy out there. I mean, Steve Keim signed a few good players to extensions, but by and large, he left Monty Austin for it with a deeply flawed roster. Roster that's definitely not built to win anytime soon, I would say. For my money, barring Jonathan Gannon being the second coming of Sean McDermott, this team is going to be battling for Tampa Bay as the number one overall pick this season, and that's really my top two as far as the draft is concerned. Pick the order, I don't know. My money is on Tampa Bay because somehow their QB situation is even worse than the Cardinals. But for my money, it's those two teams, and then a gulf, and then whoever comes after that. I mean, it's going to be a battle, a dogfight for that number one pick between the Bucs and the Cardinals this year, as far as I'm concerned. Let's look at the personnel moves from this past offseason, though. Starting with the draft, they got Paris Johnson, offensive tackle out of Ohio State in the first round. Like that pick, a pick they needed, quite frankly, and one that kind of makes their offensive line sneaky okay this year. We'll get to that in just a second, but I actually don't hate their offensive line. I think they're probably better than the Rams, quite frankly. At number two, they get B.J. Ojulari. No, second round, not number two. They get B.J. Ojulari out of LSU, outside linebacker there to add to that pass rushing unit. Third round, they draft cornerback Garrett Williams out of Syracuse. Third round as well, they get Michael Wilson, wide receiver out of Stanford. John Gaines, offensive guard out of UCLA, they get in the fourth round. Clayton Tune, quarterback out of Houston, there for about a decade. He'll be stepping in as probably the third string behind Kyler Murray and Colt McCoy in whatever order you want to put those guys in. Also in the fifth round, they get Owen Papo out of Auburn, inside linebacker over there. Then you get Keitrell Clark, cornerback out of Louisville as well. That's your draft there for the Arizona Cardinals. Free agency-wise, they bring in, well, actually, they lose Zach Allen to the Denver Broncos, following his defensive coordinator, Vance Joseph, there to Denver. DeAndre Hopkins, they end up cutting him. He goes to the Tennessee Titans this offseason. Byron Murphy gets snatched away by the Minnesota Vikings. Love that pickup for the Vikings. Kaiser White, they bring him in over from the Philadelphia Eagles. You know, familiarity with Jonathan Gannon's system coming in there. Will Hernandez, they retain on a 2-year deal. Matt Prater, they retain on a 2-year deal. Kelvin Beachum, they do the same at guard, kicker, and left tackle, respectively, for those three. How about this for a name? Hjalte Froholt, what a name. They can retain, actually no, they bring him in from Cleveland. He's kind of buried on that depth chart at center there with that elite offensive line that they've got. Zach Pascal, they bring him in over from the Philadelphia Eagles, wide receiver coming in there. Dennis Daly, they bring him in over from the Tennessee Titans, tackle. Ezekiel Turner, inside linebacker from Arizona, stays in Arizona. Jeff Swaim, they bring him in over tight end from the Tennessee Titans. Carlos Watkins, defensive end, they bring over from Dallas. They retain Antonio Hamilton, cornerback. Marcus Golden, they lose. He goes to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Chosen Anderson, he goes to the Miami Dolphins. Camu Grugier-Hill goes to the Carolina Panthers. Chris Boyd comes over at cornerback from the Minnesota Vikings. More of a special teams player, though that's where he'll probably get the bulk of his duties if I had to guess. He comes over from Minnesota. And then Elijah Wilkinson, they get at offensive guard coming over from Atlanta, buried on that depth chart and behind a really solid offensive line, quite frankly. That is your personnel moves, though. So let's get to the final depth chart review of the day. Obviously, if he can start, he'll start. Kyler Murray is your starter, then Colt McCoy is the second string, with Clayton Tune being the third. At quarterback, at running back, still got James Conner there. Keontae Ingram, who I've certainly heard of for sure, there is the second string, with Corey Clement as the third. Marquise Brown is your number one wide receiver at this point, with Rondale Moore and Greg Dortch as your other two. A diminutive wide receiver group, I'll just put it to you that way. Zach Pascal is your biggest guy, but he's your fourth string wide receiver right now. Good luck with press man coverage. I don't know exactly how that's going to work out for you. Hopefully you use a lot of lateral crossing routes, if you will, to take advantage of the speed, because they are a very, very fast group of receivers. And hopefully, under this new regime of Jonathan Gannon, you'll get a lot of pa-choo, 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 explosives, shots, all that sort of stuff. We can only hope. And then, for the 3 games you'll have Zach Ertz at tight end, with Trey McBride taking up all the other slack behind him. Then you get to the offensive line. DJ Humphries, Elijah Wilkinson, Hjalta Froholt, Will Hernandez, and Paris Johnson, which honestly, if you want to talk about the strength of the offense, I do think the offensive line is not that bad. DJ Humphries is a solid left tackle. I don't know a whole lot about the interior, but Will Hernandez played well last season. High pick there with Paris Johnson, you're hoping works out. If Humphries and Johnson play well this season, they could still have a really solid offensive line. I don't feel great about the wide receiver core. Don't feel awesome about the backfield. I certainly have a lot of questions about the quarterback situation with Kyler Murray's health in there. But the offensive line could be worse, man. They really did a good job with putting the offensive line together. If nothing else, might help them win more games than I'm expecting, but I'm not expecting them to win a lot. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. On the defensive side of the ball, looking at a left defensive end, Zaven Collins, Rashard Lawrence at left defensive tackle, Lakey Fotu at the right defensive tackle, Jonathan Ledbetter at your right defensive end. Off at linebacker, you got B.J. Ojulari, Kaiser White, Dennis Gardeck, and not an awesome front seven. Kaiser White's a good guy to put in there, I suppose. Outside of that, whole lot of question marks. At least you're not messing around with the Zaven Collins linebacker, whatever hybrid experience anymore. You're just going there with a straight up pass rushing defensive end. Good for you there. I got a lot of questions though right now. A lot of questions. As far as the secondary is concerned, you got Rashad Fenton, Marco Wilson as your corners, Jalen Thompson, Budda Baker as your safeties, and I'll just say, good luck, Jonathan Gannon. You're going to have a lot to prove this year. You're going to have to show why you got this job as a defensive coordinator stepping into a head coaching role, because, it is a full plate of problems there, man. You got Budda Baker on the back end for sure, but not a great secondary outside of that. Not a great front seven in front of them. It's not shaping up to be awesome, but hey, maybe Jonathan Gannon can put together a scheme and get this thing going. I think the Philadelphia Eagles fans certainly agree with that sentiment if you really ask them about it. Not going to touch that one with a 10-foot pole, though. With that all together, though, let's look at what I'm thinking. And as far as their floor is concerned, 2 or 3 wins. They could be so bad. They could very easily get the number 1 overall pick this year. They are a special kind of terrible, the likes of which only the Tampa Bay Buccaneers know anything about this season, and at least the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have some good names on their roster. The Cardinals have just about no one left, and it's sad to see, but this is the house that Steve Keim built, and sometimes you got to sleep in it for at least a year. It is what it is. That's the floor. 3 wins as far as I'm concerned. Ceiling, 6 wins at best. I do not see them being even close to a winning record. Even with the offensive line playing well, even if the offense is a little bit better than I think they will be, the defense just has next to no hope unless Jonathan Gannon is much better at the X's and O's of that than I'm expecting. I just don't see how this team even sniffs a playoff berth. They are in the rebuild of all rebuilds. Once again, the house that Steve Keim built, not exactly a shining beacon of stability in any facet of the building construction there. My prediction for them, 4-13. Like I said, they will be neck and neck with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as far as who's going to be number one. And hell, even if they're slated there at the number 2 pick, which I think at the I don't know about the very worst. The very worst are going to be top 5 this year, I would say. They could very easily be the number two pick. If they are in that top 2, though, Drake May, not a bad consolation prize. I'll tell you that right now. You got 2 bona fide franchise caliber talents at the top of the draft next year at quarterback. If they're in position for either one of them, I would expect them to probably trade Kyler Murray in that situation and draft whether it be Caleb Williams or Drake May at 1 or 2. Take your pick. Probably a little bit more what they're looking for as far as a new front office being in there, a clean slate start, if you will, at quarterback. But there you have it. That is my NFC West preview. And with that, thank you so much for tuning in, guys. This has been Unqualified Analysis. If you want to subscribe, just hit subscribe. Nothing's stopping you there. Just please go ahead, share it with a friend. Try and get this thing growing a little bit. I'd love to see it happen. We're going to be getting back to 2 episodes a week here in the near future once the football season is back in full swing. And I can't wait. I'm just goosebumps. Excited for football season. Even an hour and a half into this podcast, I'm just juiced. Absolutely juiced for football season right now. But with that said, you can follow me on all my socials at Caleb Verzek if you feel so inclined. Basically just Twitter. And I'm not calling it X. Suck my dick, Elon. I'm not calling it X. It's Twitter and their tweets for as long as I'm alive, quite frankly. With that said, though, if you want to contact the show, either shoot me a DM on Twitter or shoot me an email at unqualifiedanalysis@gmail.com with, business or show in the whatchamahoos in the subject line, if you will, if you'd like to be categorized accordingly. If not, just freeball it, I guess. Just do what you feel is right. It's all we can do as human beings sometimes. With that said, though, this has been Unqualified Analysis. I still got no clue what I'm talking about, but one thing I learned this week, the great feared Attila the Hun, well-known conqueror, coming straight out of Hungary, out of the Eurasian steppe, if you will. He died of a nosebleed because he fell asleep on his back while absolutely piss drunk after his own wedding. I think he consummated the marriage, fell asleep on his back, got a nosebleed, suffocated from the nosebleed, and that is how the great Attila the Hun died. He didn't die in battle. He died in his bed of a nosebleed. There you go. I'm going to go to bed, basically. See ya.